Congressman Rokita, thanks again for joining us on AOPA Live this week and talking today about the General Aviation Pilot Protection Act, of which you are a co-author. And how many co-sponsors do we have now on this bill?
Well, we're up to 140 co-sponsors now, Warren. In fact, we got two more basically on my walk over here to do this interview. So the momentum continues to build. The last time I was on AOPA Live, we just had the original co-sponsors, or so Sam Graves and I, and a handful of other leaders on the General Aviation Caucus. And now, you know, again, like I say, up to 140. And to put that in a little bit of perspective, Warren, there are only 45 bills in the U.S. House of Representatives out of 4,500 that have been filed that have enough co-sponsors to pass. So, and we're just under 100 for passage just by co-sponsors, not just votes on the floor, but co-sponsorship. So, if you think about that, we are way, way above average for this tiny little, but yet common sense aviation bill.
Well, that's really good news, and of course our members are looking very forward to medical certificate reform. So,
and I got to thank AOPA and the membership. Of course, I've been a member since 1990 or so, and I like to think I haven't missed one issue of the magazine, although a couple of them are stacked up, ready to be read still. But it's the membership and it's the organization itself and the leaders inside the organization that have really driven this. I'm blessed, and Sam Graves is blessed as legislators who have a great support group in organizations like AOPA and its members who really push this issue with their members of Congress back home.
Let me ask you about that. We have just put out a call to our members asking them to contact people who are not their members if they're not already co-sponsors of the bill. How important is that to hear from your constituents?
Hey, look, it is very important. You are listened to. We are listened to. You have got to call in. You've got to email and write in. And you're right at this time to focus on those members of Congress, both in the House and the Senate, because Senator Bozeman and others in the Senate have introduced a companion bill to the General Aviation Pilot Protection Act. It's mirror language to mine and Sam's language. And they have 17 senators out of 100. So their percentage is way down. So focus on the Senate, focus on your House of Representative member if he or she isn't on the bill yet. And I believe if you go to your Action Center, I think you have one of the most robust website pages for determining if a particular member is on or off a bill. If your member of Congress is on a bill, is on this bill already, go ahead and send them a thank you email and say, hey, we're still very interested in this. Stay on it. If it goes into the next Congress, get back on it. But specifically at this time, focus on those members of Congress and your United States senators who aren't on the bill.
Now, when we talked with Congressman Graves a couple of weeks ago, he said that either through this legislation or through regulatory reform, medical certificate reform is going to happen. Do you share his confidence?
I do, and I share his tenacity. You know, if we didn't push here in Washington, and if the members didn't push back home, I'd be less confident. But look, we're going to keep up the flank. The last time I was on AOPA Live, again, we had no co-sponsors really, except for the originals. Now we have 140. The FAA hadn't even responded to us at the time, and now they promised rules. Sam and I believe, yeah, on August 22nd, just wrote a letter to Secretary Fox saying, hey, we want to see these rules pushed on to Office of Management and Budget, which would be their last stop before publication and comment. We wanted to see that happen within the next 30 days. So the FAA has said they're coming out with rules. That's huge movement right there. We have the Senate companion bill. That's occurred since the last time I've been on AOPA Live. And all that means to say is that, you know, you have to keep the pressure up. It's working. I am confident. And if these rules aren't exactly what we want or not nearly what we want, we have the ability to comment and change them. And then we're going to keep this legislation up in case it's not what we want, or in case they decide not to do anything, which I hope is not the case. I don't believe it to be the case. And then we're going to keep this legislation up into the next Congress if we have to, get all these co-sponsors back on, which should not be a problem, just in terms of procedure for your members to know. It's not like we have to start from ground zero next Congress. We have to ask everyone to get back on. But once a member of Congress commits on a piece of legislation in one Congress, it's very easy, relatively, to get them back on in the subsequent Congress because they already made the commitment. So Sam and I and others here, we're going to keep the pressure up legislatively in an effort to keep the rules procedure moving. And if that rules procedure goes south, well, then we'll fix this legislatively.
And you know, Congressman Graves did say that he thought it was the legislation that really prompted the FAA to move, because they would rather write their own regs than have Congress write them for them.
Well, yeah, the legislation, I think, has had a significant effect. It was an effective vehicle for getting the FAA to move, and hopefully the FAA sees that this is a common sense measure. This is about safety. This is about the economy. This is about getting more pilots back in to aviation again, and we have data to back it up. The 10 years of experience in the light sport aircraft certification arena shows that we don't need to have this third-class medical regulatory regime to have safety. In fact, it adds nothing to safety. So it's really a win-win for everybody. The FAA could focus on things that they ought to be focusing on and not worry about third-class medical paper forms and whatnot. And we could be safer pilots, and we could have more of them in the sky.
Now, the rule has passed from FAA to the Department of Transportation and then on to Office of Management and Budget. Are you hearing anything coming back from DOT or OMB about what's going on with the rule?
Well, they have not yet responded to our August 22nd letter. The Secretary Fox hasn't in his office. Now, that's not necessarily unexpected. It would be unexpected in my office for my constituents not to get a letter or to wait on a letter that long. But we've written a lot of letters to a lot of agencies, and they seem to like to wait a little bit. But we're going to keep the pressure up. And in fact, I'm going to be meeting with the National Transportation Safety Board Chairman next week. He's going to come to my office based on some, I think, comments that he made that were in regard to a question that was at a hearing a couple weeks ago. My bill and the Pilot Protection Act, that had nothing to do with the hearing. I think it came out of left field from a congressman who's not on the bill and probably doesn't understand the language and doesn't understand general aviation. And I think the chairman might have been caught off guard, and I want to, my instinct was to pick up the phone and call him, and he agreed to come to my office. We're going to walk through the bill, and I look forward, just like my meeting with the FAA administrator was very positive and proactive. I expect my meeting next week with the National Transportation Safety Board chairman to be positive and a good outcome, and I'll report on that to y'all after that meeting.
Yeah, well, you're correct. The Acting Chairman Hart's comments did sort of catch all of us by surprise, because it did seem to come out of left field.
Yeah, and I'm going to take a man or woman, at his word the first time I meet him, and just try to unpack where he is in his own mind on this. But as I reviewed the footage from that hearing, it was clear to me, given that the hearing subject matter had nothing remotely to do with our bill, that he was, understandably caught off guard by this congressman who wanted to have a gotcha moment. But we'll find out next week when I sit down and talk with him.
Moving back to the bill, there are not very many days left in your legislative calendar. Is there going to be any attempt to move the bill out of committee and onto the floor for a vote in this Congress?
Well, I'm also meeting with Chairman Schuster, the chair of the House Transportation Committee next week. We're scheduled to meet, and this will definitely be the main subject that we talk about. But And it's true that we have very few legislative days left. We have what we call a quote-unquote lame duck session that would come up after the November elections but before the new Congress starts. And there may be some opportunity there. But we also have the FAA reauthorization bill that will move through the Transportation Committee next Congress. And so, again, if this issue carries into next Congress, we can reintroduce the bill. We can much more easily get those 140, and I assume it'll be more than 140 by the time this Congress ends, 140 co-sponsors back in to show that it's one of the most popular bills in the Congress, and then perhaps use the FAA reauthorization as a vehicle to attach this Pilot Protection Act bill to and get it moving that way. And that all assumes the FAA didn't come out with rules or came out with rules that were not what we would consider desirable or even workable, and then they wouldn't change it upon our recommendation. So it's, again, keeping that legislative flank up, and I think that legislative flank can be just as effective next Congress as it has been so far this Congress. I mean, again, look how far, Warren, we moved in a matter of just a few months since this bill was introduced, since I came on AOPA Live, and since our members took to the street, so to speak, and made their expertise, really, in the area known to their respective representative and senator.
Well, Congressman Rokita, thank you very much for appearing once again on AOPA Live. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the AOPA members?
Just another big thank you for your tenacity. I'm so proud of this organization and its members. You don't understand just how effective you're being here in Washington by using your voice, using it in an effective way, and staying on in a respectful way, staying on your legislators. Keep it up. This is moving. We've moved incredible mountains in just a few months, and there's more to come.